Hello, Bill Scher.
Good morning, Matt Lewis.
Welcome to the DMZ, everyone. Getting close to the holidays, my friend. And I misled you last week. I said that I would not be in front of a Christmas tree, and yet here I am.
Did the U.S. Postal Service come through, or was this through some privatized shipper that you got your Vermont Christmas tree?
No, man. This tree right behind me here comes in a box. You would not believe it. It's a real Christmas tree, and it comes in a box that is surprisingly. I mean, it's obviously 5 or 6 feet long, but it's about the size of a book. In terms of it's amazing. And then the branches just, when you open the box, just come tumbling out. And it's a real tree. It comes from Vermont or something.
You don't have to assemble the tree.
No, it's real. Here's the thing. I've said this many a time. My wife found this. We've been doing this for about almost a decade, probably. It's a website. This is not my department. I've outsourced this, but this is under the wife's heading, and the kids have now taken to saying that she's the boss of the family. So, we're not going to dispute that, but certainly that's her sphere is the tree. And so I just sort of do what I'm told. But tonight we are one of my boys is in a Christmas play. He is. I was told that he was going to be the innkeeper who turned away Jesus. It turns out he is the innkeeper who allows Jesus to sleep in his barn. And then after that, we're going to go out to dinner with my in-laws, and then we're going to come back and we're going to fully decorate this tree and put more lights and stuff on it, and maybe listen to a little Bruce Springsteen. Santa Claus is coming to town. Wind whipping down the boardwalk. So anyway, that's the story of our tree. And here's the deal that I've said many a time: if part of your ritual, your holiday celebration, involves going out and picking out the perfect tree and strapping it to the roof of your car, then by all means do that. But for me, I don't necessarily enjoy that part. What I do like is putting the lights and the ornaments on and having it. So my whole thing is don't spend time doing the things that don't. This is from Adam Carolla. Does it make you money or does it make you happy? If it doesn't, one of those two things, then why do it? What's the story of your Christmas tree, Bill Scher?
Well, as you may know, every year we go out to Ashfield, Massachusetts, a tiny town north of here, where we go to a Christmas tree farm where you chop it down yourself.
Manly, very manly.
They give you a dull saw, and you chop out. So they do it where you're not chopping at the base of the tree. You're chopping in the middle, and just trying to find a spot where once you take it off, it will look like a standalone tree.
But isn't there stumps? Aren't there stumps left over then after you do that?
Well, the thing is, but the tree still lives. Because you're not taking off the base of the tree.
Tells you how much I know about chopping down a Christmas tree.
It's like you break a branch off the tree still lives.
Had no idea.
So this is sort of a sustainable way to maintain your Christmas tree farm. Not that other Christmas tree farms are not sustainable because you're always replanting.
So this is a unique idea then. This is not standard across the board Christmas tree etiquette or protocol.
I don't believe this. This is the only farm that I'm
going to be blowing my nose. Let me just say, I'm going to be blowing my nose off screen throughout.
You're the bent person of this show.
Well, I just got back from I'm on airplanes. I'm in Vegas around filthy gamblers and prostitutes. I mean, not that I'm intentionally hanging out with them.
You walked the line, I hope, when you were out there.
It was not the hangover, and yet here I am. This is why I'm home right now, because I'm exhausted from this trip to Vegas. Anyway, I'm going to be blowing my nose occasionally. So let me just.
Okay. I want to explore Vegas in a little bit, but I want to stay on Christmas first.
Okay.
I'm actually curious about this play.
Yes.
Your son was in. I assume if it's a religious themed play, it's through your church and not through your school, unless he's going to a religious school.
So my kid goes to a school that is it's a liberal. Okay, it's at a liberal church. You know, have you ever seen like how churches have these signs out front that say things like, "Don't even think about parking here," or you know, this one says, "All are welcome, no exceptions." So I prefer the sign that says "Happy Holidays" is what terrorists say. But this is a very liberal church. Now it's really hard to get your kids into preschool. I literally had to call in a faith. This is like where the elite thing happens. Like if my kid would not have gotten in to any preschool, but you have to basically sign them up before they're born to get them into a preschool. I actually had to call in a few favors to make this happen. So it's like ostensibly related to a church. It's like sort of a very liberal church. It's mostly secular, but because they're affiliated with the church, they also do have the ability to do this kind of thing. So, yeah,
you've kind of blown my mind with your church affiliation. I was not expecting this.
Well, this isn't the church we go. This is not the church I attend.
Okay.
In fact, I almost got into a fight with one of the kids. Well, I won't go into that, but I only go to this thing literally once a year now for the Christmas play. And in fact,
Gotcha.
at one point, my oldest boy told, I don't know where he got this. He told the teachers, "Daddy doesn't live with us anymore." I think they thought that we were like, I don't know where he got that. I think there was a rumor that we were separated or something for a while. But Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. You know, Art Linkletter was right. Kids do say the damnedest things. It's amazing the stuff they say. Yeah. So and then my kid's in another Christmas play with our church. But I don't know what I think he might be Joseph in that one. But I am proud that he is not the innkeeper who turns Jesus away. So, and by the way, there are kids who have been cast in that role to do that.
And it sets the course of their lives. They become cruel, awful, dark people.
I mean, think about the possibility that could have some sort of a long-term impact on your psyche.
Well, I'm curious about this because, as you know, I am not a religious person. I was. Is that what this is all about?
Bill, it's time we have a little talk. This is. Have you ever heard of you've heard of the term "the come to Jesus moment," right? I want you to put your hand now. If you're out there watching this program, put your hand on the laptop screen and repeat after me.
But there's no water here. If I can't get dunked, it doesn't count.
Well, you know, it depends on your denomination there. What you know.
Anyway, you know, I was baptized Catholic. I have my father's side's Jewish. My wife is actually from an Italian family that abandoned Catholicism and was raised more traditionally Christian. Not traditionally, but you know what I mean. Mainline Christianity. And so with our kids, you know, we do nominal celebrations of both Christmas and Hanukkah just to show that you're not just one thing. You're not just part of one culture. And we obviously don't harp on the religious aspects of it very much. But in the course of the run-up to Christmas and Hanukkah, we are bombarded with requests for presents. And so in points of frustration, we'll say, you know, Christmas is not about getting presents, you know, and which is a total mixed message because from their perspective, it totally was what it is about. That's what the whole thing is. So that's confusing. And then we should talk about the importance of friends and family and coming together and spirit of sharing, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I've started to, and then we get into questions of, you know, that we celebrate Hanukkah and everybody celebrates Hanukkah and not everybody celebrates Christmas. Some people celebrate Kwanzaa. Why don't we celebrate Kwanzaa? So you have to explain all that, try to explain all that stuff. So now I'm kind of getting into just barely what religion is, just to say that some people are different religions and we don't celebrate this or that, or we don't go to church. And so my oldest one and hearing sort of the cursory explanation of this, and decided, well, I'm Christian because I like Christmas better. And I'm like, geez, I've totally screwed this up.
It's working, another successful conversion.
Well, not that if she wants to choose the faith, that's fine. She's not choosing it on the tenets of the religion.
Hey, whatever gets him in the door, my friend. Whatever gets him in the door. We're not too. No, I've had a couple of weird, not weird, but first of all, my son. Everybody thinks their kids are advanced, and look, he may not be that great. He may not end up being that great at math, but he's really like philosophical and theological. And he said something the other day, like, I was watching an adult TV program. It's like, how the hell did that happen? And I saw that that an asteroid hit the Earth and the dinosaurs were all killed. Is God going to let that happen to us? And I mean, like he asks these incredibly deep like just things that, and so I can't even remember all of them, but stuff that like Aquinas struggled with. I mean, it's just like it's stuff that's like unbelievably. It would be very complicated to explain. The other problem I have is, and Bill, you read this in my book, Too Dumb to Fail. My philosophy of, and by the way, this was a lot of think pieces or thought pieces last year, 2014, raised the question of whether or not you should tell your kids that Santa Claus is real. My philosophy is you should not lie to your kids. However, make believe is fine and fantasy is fine and all that. Well, apparently word came down from my school that my kid was telling everyone that Santa Claus isn't real. So I had to have another talk with my kid about that. And now he's like, nobody knows. Maybe Santa. That's his thing. Maybe Santa Claus. Nobody knows.
You didn't have the talk that your dad had with you yet?
I did. That was the first talk I had with him, which is, son, I'm not going to lie to you. Santa Claus is not real. But this wasn't unprovoked. He would ask me a year ago.
Right.
And I said, I'm not going to lie to you. Santa Claus is not real. There really was a guy named St. Nicholas who did give, presents and toys to needy people. But Santa Claus is not real. He'd probably burn up coming down the chimney. But I tell you this now so that you'll know when I tell you that God is real, that you'll believe me. And that was fine and dandy until he told all the kids at school that they're saps and that they're naive for believing in this fat elf. So I had to have another talk with him.
Did you at least tell them that God is real and get that message out?
Well, it's so weird. I'm at that age, like my mom came down last week and I knew she was – I told him – I was trying to teach him the ways of the world, and I said, when she gives you presents, even if you don't like them, and I knew he would like them, but I was trying to teach him this very valuable lesson. You sort of have to pretend that you like them. You have to feign liking them. And then he came home and told, Grandma, Daddy said that if I don't like your presents, I have to pretend that I like them. Immediately ratted me out. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Well, I don't have anything truly profound to say, but it's sort of interesting to me just to have when you raise your child in a faith, they very quickly have a sort of God-centric view of things where the questions that you are getting are why would God do this or that? And of course, my children are not having that upbringing. And I get a different set of questions. What this means for the future of our children, I have absolutely no idea. But
yeah. And by the way, let me just say, I think that it's tough. I think it might be tougher what I'm doing because it's countercultural as well nowadays. And even if your kids go to a religious,
but it's also more straightforward. There is a set of beliefs and tenets that you are communicating, and it's not open for debate or discussion. It's just this, and this is what you're trying to teach. But
there are like, why did my mom? Like, for example, after the Paris attacks. My son caught wind of this because my wife and I had gone to Paris this summer, and we brought them back this really cool book where it's like that you can see like the Eiffel Tower and the Champs-Élysées and all those cool things, and he heard about the Paris attacks, and then you go like, why would God allow this to happen? And that's a pretty tough thing to answer.
Isn't there a set answer for that? I mean, this has been asked a zillion times. Aren't you? Don't you have it at the ready? Don't you have that ready to go?
Well, I had to say well, because we live in a fallen world, bad things do happen, and you have to go back to like the Garden of Eden essentially, and you have to.
Right.
So it's not that you can't explain it, but it presents you with difficult. Ideally, you don't want your kids to be hearing about terrorism, like number one. Right. You know what I mean?
Or they live in a fallen world. That's a pretty heavy concept to absorb.
And my kid will go around then repeating it like, well, because of our sin nature, the flesh is weak, Daddy. So the spilt milk on the rug is going to just have to. You're going to have to live with that. I guess the point is like once you present a worldview or a theology, then it doesn't just end there. Like there are going to be a lot of challenging questions that you have to like explain. And I'm having pretty detailed conversations with a kid that's 4 years old at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
All sorts of questions. Why is the sky blue? Why did Dan Quayle become vice president? I think that was a George Carlin joke, but it still works.
Right.
It still works.
My oldest is 6. I have not had to have the ISIS discussion yet. I have not had the terrorism discussion yet. I have other things that have come up. Somewhat, we actually took her to I can't remember if I mentioned this to you before. We took her to a Hillary rally, and it was a heavy emphasis on gun control, and lots of graphic stories about guns. So we had to have a gun discussion probably a lot sooner than we were expecting. And one time I had the news radio on. For the most part, we don't have the news on in the house, so these things don't just sort of trickle in. But I happened to have the news on in the car, just preset, and so when the car turned on, the news was on. And there was a story about an armed robbery in the neighboring town, and so my kid got a little spooked about that, and I had to talk about that. But I haven't had to get into the bigger, war and peace, terrorism discussion yet. It's not being talked in school yet. They have lockdown drills, so there's a little bit about that, but it doesn't get into anything really.
It's really hard to shelter them because you could just turn on the radio. It's like, and last night the O's down the Yankees 4-2. 8 people were shot and killed earlier today, and and it's like, what are you gonna do? And the daddy, why radio? It was just, is Batman gonna come save them?
Right.
What else was I gonna say about this?
This has been a pretty big tangent for us. Perhaps we should get back to Vegas.
Well, we could, but I just have to say, yes, a tangent. But this is why we put asses in the seats. I mean, this is why people tune into this. I hear a lot that this is the favorite, this banter. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Totally, well, not apropos of nothing, but fairly random. But the interesting thing is that ISIS was my wife. Not that long ago, before the rise of ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria, there was a thing called ISIS that my wife used to watch, and it was videos about like child rearing and breastfeeding and like motherhood. There was like this, I don't even know what it stood for, but like there used to be this thing called ISIS that was like a video for like moms and like a mommy bloggers and stuff. And they've really ruined that acronym or whatever for everyone, I feel like.
So I'm more confident we won't be talking about them in a few years. I think the name will be restored to its proper place.
No, I think it's like the Hitler mustache. He ruined that whole look. Even if it's going to be a while before you can call something ISIS.
All right. So you went to Vegas.
I went to Vegas. I don't like to. And here's the thing that I don't go to. I'm not going to be in Iowa. I'm not going to. But I will go. It's close enough to a coast that I will go there.
So you did not gamble?
I don't gamble, People have their vices.
Yeah.
We've all got our temptations. Gambling does not do it for me. So
Vegas is my absolute least favorite place in the universe. I find it a loathsome, ugly, soul-sucking place. And
I would rather go to New Orleans if I were going to really let loose and
not even not even close. And I was actually in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. Not that I was there as a frat boy. We were on a road trip and just happened to be Mardi Gras, so we went through. And all that stuff I also thought was horrible. But outside of that, there's lots of great stuff in New Orleans. Vegas is just the horribleness is just
because it's like
the reason of the place.
Well, but both of them are sinful Sodom and Gomorrah type towns, but New Orleans has character. I mean, it has history.
Well, it has music and food.
Yeah, and Vegas is more like soulless and sterile and exploitive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think we feel the same way. By the way, I will.
When I do go to Vegas, I generally am not a gambler, but I'll say, okay, I'm going to go and I'll lose $50 and then I'm done. I'm not gonna go broke in Vegas. I'll treat it like that. That's the cost of entertainment in Vegas, and that'll be my cap. And I'll lose that in about 10 minutes, and my time there is done. And I have to waste the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, I would say that this one was it was a little cooler because you could just hang out at the casino, or you have to go through the casino to go anywhere. So
right,
you could just hang out in the lobby or wherever and see Chris Christie just walking, randomly. If you go to my Instagram, Matt K. Lewis, you can see my pictures, and you would just see Chris Christie randomly walking down the hanging out or whomever. So it was probably better than, Mark McKinnon with his cowboy hat on and his vest walking. I had a picture with Mickey Kals actually at the casino. You can find that on Instagram, Matt K. Lewis. Mickey Kals and yours truly. It was great. I tell you, one of the best things about doing it was just had a great conversation with Hugh Hewitt. Had a great conversation with Mickey Kals. Had lunch with a bunch of my Daily Caller colleagues and former colleagues, including Michelle Fields and Alexis Levinson.
Was there a flavor of the off-camera conversations? What is there something under the surface in Republican conservative circles? Being able to kind of come together after having a primary season that has not gone the way anyone expected. You see everybody on stage. Is there a different essence to what is being said that we wouldn't necessarily see on Twitter or on air commentary?
Because almost everything I learn, if I'm talking to somebody, or if I start hearing things, basically I will immedately use it. I'll immediately steal it for TV commentary or for my writing. So for example, one of the things that I heard from multiple people was we're kind of starting to get worried about Rubio. 3 months ago, his people were telling us that he's sort of biding his time and he's, he doesn't want to peak too soon. And then I started hearing from people who were sort of nominally like Rubio or nominally supporting Rubio, starting to get a little concerned, he needs to turn it on. But I will say that, the sort of knock on him not being aggressive enough, not campaigning hard enough, was a little dispelled because, Todd Harris, his media, I guess his campaign guru, we were on a flight together back to D.C. yesterday. And as I was getting on that flight, I see that Rubio is literally speaking in Iowa. I mean, he had just been in the debate the night before, and at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock the next morning, he was in Iowa. So he clearly has turned it on a little bit. He's hustling. Maybe he waited sort of now is when he's going to take it up to 11. But
the big question is,
that was one of the things I was hearing.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit last show. I think since then there was a National Review story saying that people on the ground in Iowa complain that Rubio is not there enough, and,
Yeah.
and the staff infrastructure is not set up. And there's an article in the Boston Globe before that saying similar things about his New Hampshire operation that's not up to speed.
Well, one of the things I heard is like people would say Rubio came here, gave an amazing speech, inspired everybody, and then just went away, and we haven't heard from his people. You know what I mean? And like this is anecdotal, but but that's what you hear.
But for the most part, Rubio has generally had good debates, but hasn't done all that much interesting between the debates. And Trump is sort of the opposite. Trump has terrible debates, then goes crazy between the debates and soaks up all the attention. So here you have a debate where we have the first real extended scrap between two candidates, Cruz and Rubio, and also, like I said, an undercard, Jeb and Trump. That went on for a few rounds, and I see in the reactions people saying different things over who got the upper hand there.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to blow my nose again, and I just say, speaking of the debate, not as bad. This is not nearly as bad as Ben Carson coughing throughout the debate. So just bear with me.
But certainly, you couldn't say that Rubio won that debate going away, even if you think he did a little better than Cruz.
No, I agree. I agree.
That was not a breakout moment for Rubio. If he's not getting stellar debate performances, well, then he's really got to do something between now and the next debate. The next debate's going to be in mid-January. You have a bit of a Christmas break. Iowa's February 1st, a little bit later than usual. So I think they can probably take a bit more of a break in the holidays than they could in past years when Iowa was earlier in January. Right. But it's not just sort of turning on and showing up. You got to start having ground game. You need precinct captains. You need people explain to their neighbors, here's how Iowa caucuses work, and so you don't get pulled from one side of the gymnasium to the other when you don't have enough people showing up. I
went to a Rubio rally in Vegas the day before the debate, and there were obviously people there before he spoke trying to instruct people how to caucus. Rick Harrison, I think the guy's name is, from Pawn Stars, also spoke. So, but I mean, you get the sense now. Again, you can't know for sure because grassroots stuff is inherently below the radar. But I get the sense that Cruz is more devious, more calculating, more aggressive, and more organized, and that Rubio is more visionary, gives a great speech. But not as ambitious, not as aggressive, and
but you had a piece where you thought the Rubio's team was the ruthless campaign under the Rubio himself doesn't come across as devious, but you were arguing that his staff was going to go for the jugular.
Well, I need to sort of clarify. I think that they are. I think that number one, I think that Rubio is tougher, and has the potential to be nastier than people realize because he comes across as he's got that great smile and that affable sort of boyish charm. I think he's like Michael Corleone. The young Michael Corleone in the beginning of The Godfather, the sort of comes back from World War II and then he goes in and has a gun taped up in the bathroom or whatever. I think Rubio has the potential to be a lot tougher than people think. And I think his campaign this is just my sense, okay? Is that when it comes to messaging, they are very aggressive and smart and all of that. I suspect that Cruz is all of that too, but that Cruz is also outmaneuvering them on the ground in terms of the ground organization. That's what it seems like. But I could be totally wrong about that. That's the sense that I get. So anyway,
well, going back to the debate itself, what did you think? I mean, who won that round between Cruz and Rubio?
Well, okay, so first of all, I think that was by far that's the story of the night was the Cruz versus Rubio session, the fights that they had. I think both of them did. I think nobody won, nobody lost per se. I think that it was a substantive debate. And it was about immigration, and it was also about national security. And I thought it was substantive. I think that if you had to assign a winner on that fight, initially, at least for the night of the debate, you would say Cruz won. Because, number one, I think if you're talking about immigration and the audience are Republican-based primary voters, if the topic is immigration, Rubio loses. And I think Rubio was also harmed by the fact that you had Rand Paul, who shouldn't have been in the debate to begin with, who was there throwing sort of cheap shots at Rubio and twisting the knife in his back. So Rubio, unlike Cruz, because Cruz has this apparent like sort of deal cut or whatever with Donald Trump, where those two won't dare hit each other. Rubio was fending off attacks from multiple people. They were talking about immigration. So I think that in terms of the actual night, even though Rubio did fine, and by the way, Cruz. So anyway, in the short term, I think that you would say that Cruz won. I think, however, that things happened that night that are going to play out where it's going to be much more even. So, for example, Cruz said things about how he didn't, quote, intend, or he never intended to support legalization. Well, first of all, that's just factually not true. It's not only a flip-flop. He was either lying in 2013 or he's lying now. And Bret Baier on Special Report.
We could well have been lying in 2013. That seems to be the more plausible.
Well, we can get into that, but the other thing is, it sounded Clintonian. Like I didn't intend. I never intended to support legalization. I mean, it's lawyerly. It's slick, and I think that Charles Krauthammer made this point on Special Report. Cruz wants this to be a policy discussion. Rubio wants this to be a character issue, and there is a thing about Ted Cruz that he strikes people as unlikable, as scheming, as calculating, and the whole "I didn't intend to." And I don't want to misquote him, but whatever it was Clintonian, and its parsing of legalistic language. And
what's funny about that, when you talk to people on the left, I hear so much, just anecdotally talking to friends. This goes back years. Cruz is dangerous. He's so devious. He's trouble. I don't know how are we going to stop that guy. And I'm always like, well, he's a total jerk, and everybody hates him, so you don't have to worry about that guy. I don't care how devious he wants to be. He never wins. So
he could totally win the nomination. He could win the nomination. I think it's entirely.
If he did, he would get crushed. I mean, my point is that I think the left.
Maybe he's smart.
The left looks. I think the left looks at that deviousness as frightening. And just from when you're talking about, there are people on the right looking at it as a character flaw. It's not an endearing quality of Cruz that he's transparently devious.
Right, but the people who spot it, the people who see through him, are not the people who will be voting, who will be caucusing in Iowa or wherever.
Well, he could win Iowa, but that's I think he will win Iowa.
But my point is, the people who find him repellent are not the people who matter that much in terms of his nomination.
Well, but the history has been that the sliver of far-right conservatives in Iowa have not determined who the eventual nominee is, because once you get into primaries in bigger states and people are voting who are not necessarily hardcore,
I think you're underrating him. It's not just
Mark Levin fans. It changes the whole game.
I think you're underrating his potential. I think he could. It's not just Iowa. I think that this guy could. I think he could. I'm not predicting he will, but I think you're underrating him. I think Ted Cruz could be the nominee and could certainly transcend just winning in Iowa. And I will also say this: I would not be surprised if he won the nomination and then, being calculating and strategic, went to the center and ran a much more aggressive campaign against Hillary, and probably would be supporting legalization at that point.
His whole shtick is vote for me because I'm the real conservative. We've had too many Romneys and McCains, and
that's his shtick now because that's what works now. I'm telling you, this guy. Look,
I've no respect for Ted Cruz, but I cannot see that guy becoming a moderate all of a sudden. in the general. That would not work. That would be the most transparently Machiavellian thing to do. It would be still a disaster.
This is a guy who worked in the Bush administration. Okay? And now he's Mr. This is a guy who worked in the Bush administration who 2 years ago supported legalization of illegal immigrants. And today he's where he is. You don't think he has the ability to transition or segue into being something that he wasn't? He's
let's get into the Cruz immigration thing. So as you intimated, the day after the debate, the Rubios are trying to play this card on Cruz ever since the last debate that Cruz was for the legalization of the undocumented in 2013. So there's really not that much difference between us. We're all for amnesty. Everyone's for amnesty. So why are you so mad at me? Which I think is a crazy Rubio strategy because it doesn't make him look good to the hard right in the party. Maybe he drags Cruz down, but he doesn't necessarily rise in relation to that. He just drags them both down. But anyway, for a while, Cruz was obviously pushing back on this, saying, look, I'm the guy who fought the Rubio-Schumer bill and defeated it at the end of the day. So how are you going to blame me for being pro-amnesty? That's ridiculous. But now he's getting caught up in the fact that part of his strategy in 2013 was to have an amendment that would prevent a path to citizenship, which was in the Gang of Eight Senate bill, but allow for the legalization of the undocumented. And as you point in that debate, he was saying, I want to see comprehensive immigration reform. I want to see my amendment pass. I want this to be in the final bill. Now he suggests, without not quite saying it, and so this came up in more relief on Fox News on Wednesday, the day after the debate, in the Bret Baier special report interview, that this was to expose the hypocrisy of the Rubio-Schumer-Obama forces.
Yeah, so
they claim they want to have.
Wasn't Jeff Flake involved in that bill? I don't know. I never heard his name.
I would imagine. I mean,
Flake,
never
hear his name mentioned. I think he was a co-sponsor. But anyway, the Rubio-Schumer bill. Yes.
Right. That's what they call it now. I mean, obviously there were more. There was more than one Republican in that bill. They had. I think they got into double digits. But the point being is Cruz is suggesting without not quite saying it, this was a poison pill intended to show that
only problem with that is
their bill was rotten, and that he didn't really want to have it passed in the first place.
Only problem with that is he looked people, conservatives like Robbie George and Byron York, in the eye and said, "This is not a poison pill." And that if we're negotiating in good faith. So he was either lying then or he's lying now. I don't think it's clear the answer to that. This is a guy who was
the more plausible explanation.
This is a guy who worked in the Bush administration that was for amnesty by their definition. This is a guy who not that long ago was in favor of TPP and fast track authority, and I don't think he is today. I mean, I don't know. This is a guy who used to want, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think I remember him wanting more legal immigration, wanting more legal immigration. Now I think he wants to fact check me on this one, people. But I didn't he recently say he wanted to stop, take a look at slowing down or even legal immigration or whatever. Anyway, I don't know is the bottom line, whether he was lying then or he's lying now.
But if you are a Tea Party anti-immigration conservative, this debate didn't happen all that long ago. You were there, you were watching, and Cruz was on your side and Rubio was on the other side. I mean, there are battle lines drawn, and Cruz helped stop the bill, and Rubio was trying to pass the bill until he abandoned it.
No, Cruz didn't help stop the bill, though. The bill passed the Senate.
Passed the Senate, but then after that, Rubio then kind of washed his hands of it and said, "Let's do something different in the House. This can't pass the House. And now he says we have to deal with the border security measures first before we even talk about a citizenship path." That's the evolution of his position.
And I think Cruz could legitimately say, I was for legalization because we're not going to deport 11 million, illegal immigrants. By the same token, people broke the law and came here illegally. I don't think that they should be voting. I don't think that they should have that. That's a privilege. It's something that, that's a defensible position, but he's not. But he's certainly not saying that.
Well, no, he's not saying that. And so he has an interview with Bret Baier. Bret Baier really presses him. Cruz, hems and haws at certain points.
Stutters at certain points.
Yeah,
he was. I've never seen him.
We've seen him, Ted Cruz.
I've never seen him this flustered.
Right.
I'm not saying he fell apart or anything like that, but there were a couple of moments where he was, visibly flustered.
So I see a lot of Washington Republicans on Twitter saying Cruz did terrible. This was embarrassing. This really, all that stuff. What I can't tell from Twitter is if you are an Iowa conservative who was already leaning towards Cruz and really hates immigration, and you like Steve King, the Iowa congressman who's endorsed Cruz, does that make you wobble? Or do you dismiss that the same way that when people say, well, Trump's for single payer and Trump like Hillary
right.
for the Iran negotiations? If you're in, do you just dismiss that? Say that those are the Rubio establishment forces trying to tear down Cruz. I know what the real deal was. Right. I know he fought the Gang 8 bill. I don't care about all that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say, Bill, number one, props to Bret Baier. This was an incredibly good interview. Bret Baier exposed Cruz. If you were a sophisticated viewer, and that is the caveat, Cruz, it was devastating to Cruz. And Baier did it.
I wrote about this back in May before the first debate because Bret Baier is one of the minors of the first debate. I said to the Republicans, watch out for Bret Baier. He seems like a nice little choir boy, but
most of the big Republican gaffes have happened. Not most of, but I would say like a disproportionate number of big moment Republican gaffes or mess ups happen talking to Fox News.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's happened with Megyn Kelly. It's happened with Sean Hannity. So it's not just the more neutral voices like Bret Baier.
Bret Baier did a masterful job. I mean, this is seriously. I'm not blowing smoke or anything like that. Like, if you're a journalist who appreciates journalism, this was a great piece of journalism. He would ask. He never lost his temper. He never got mad. He was very pleasant the whole thing. He would ask, but it was like it was a litigator leading someone down a trail. And Cruz postures himself as this great, brilliant debater and very smart. And he was outmaneuvered by Bret Baier because Bret Baier would ask him a question very nicely. Cruz would answer it. And then Bret Baier just had, well, let me read you something you said in 2013. Just exposing to anybody who's paying attention, which is a big caveat, granted, that Cruz was lying or whatever, or had flip-flopped. And then Cruz would come back with something. Just the follow-up questions by Baier were great. He came equipped with multiple citations of Cruz that clearly illustrated that he was not shooting straight. He didn't fire all of his ammunition at once. Baier didn't lay everything out. He would let Cruz make a statement, and then he would show that statement, he'd contradict it. And it was about immigration, but it was also about his, Ted Cruz's sort of obsequiousness toward Donald Trump, how in private Cruz was willing to attack Trump, but in public he would not do it. He would not say Obamacare in public. It was a great interview.
The obvious move for Cruz now would be a massive tweet storm talking about how awful Bret Baier is, right? I mean, that's how Donald Trump would deal with it. He would rally the conservative forces to excoriate Baier.
That is what Trump would
trash his credibility.
That is what Trump would do. I don't see. I think Cruz. I mean, granted, the rules have changed for everybody, but Trump exists in a different plane than everyone else, and Ted Cruz is still governed by the laws of nature, and Cruz is still like a real politician, nominally. So he can't do the stuff that Trump does exactly. So I don't think he gets. I don't think Cruz gets away with things to the degree that Trump gets away with them.
Well, do you think that obviously you think it was a bad interview for Cruz, but does it damage him in that it makes it harder for him to go beyond his natural base? Maybe it makes it harder for him to get past Iowa? Or do you think it's so bad that he could lose Iowa now, that even his hardcore supporters are going to question his bona fides after this?
No, I think he wins Iowa. I think part of it depends on like what happens next. Does this story just go away? Or does this YouTube video get passed around? Is there a TV ad showing him stuttering? How do the Rubio people parlay this into, keep this alive? Does this narrative, because there's a real potential narrative that Ted Cruz is a sort of used car salesman, a Bill Clinton-esque type character. And that's a character issue. And, but that argument has to be made. And one interview does not a narrative make. So it depends on how they parlay it. But I'm just saying this interview, I also think it's interesting. Like if you were an average person watching the debate, the nuclear triad thing that Trump wasn't familiar with, and then Rubio explained it. Well, if you're really watching it very closely, it was clear that Rubio thoroughly understands this and that Trump doesn't. But Rubio didn't say, it was clear that, because Donald doesn't know what this means, let me explain. Like, Rubio didn't hammer it home. I think it was entirely possible for an average person to watch that debate and to have no idea that even happened. And I think the same thing is true of this. Like, from knowing what I know and being, look, I don't want to say that I'm a more sophisticated consumer of news, but like, if I don't know this, it's a problem because I get paid to know this, right? Like if you're a plumber,
well, you spend your whole day consuming this stuff.
If you're a plumber and you don't know about
your job
pipes, then you're not a good plumber. Like, it's not that I'm smarter. It's just that like, this is what I do. So like, from my vantage point, watching that debate, it was utterly devastating for Cruz. Bret Baier just dismantled him. And like I said on Twitter, the only thing left that would have been more damning would have been if at the end Cruz says, "You're damn right I ordered the code red." Like he had him like dead to rights or whatever the expression is. But I think it's possible the casual viewer, in Iowa just watching or wherever, New Hampshire, I'm not anti-Midwest. That's just like the average person watching doesn't fully. It's not that they're calculating and saying, yeah, he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. I'm saying the average person, even if they happen to be watching, may not fully appreciate how damning and how devastating that was because Bret Baier did it in it was kind of a subtle way of destroying somebody. He didn't do it with a right hook. He did it sort of very, very casually.
So do you think that, circling back to the beginning of the conversation, is a Cruz-Rubio fight a zero-sum game? So if Cruz goes down, Rubio goes up. If Rubio goes down, Cruz goes up. Or has that, establishment, Tea Party battle has yet to really be joined? They're still kind of in their own lanes, and a scrap between them can take them both down, which would fit, my worldview. This is all leading to Jeb.
I'm sorry.
If there's a murder-suicide between Cruz and Rubio, like there was between Howard Dean and Dick Hepburn, which let John Kerry get through.
It would be if that happens. We have to save this tape if that happens,
right?
Because it would be you would be. Okay, it probably wouldn't be fully appreciated, but I would promote. That I would promote you. For having been,
thank you. Even at my own here,
even at my own expense, for having called this one, because it seems so unlikely. But hey, crazier things have happened.
Did Jeb not have a good debate on Tuesday?
I think he had his best debate. I think that was Jeb's best debate, which is not saying much. but I think it was his best debate.
Well, his opening statement and his closing statement were terrible. Like he still can't do like the set piece. He's much better even when he's giving.
You know what part? I have to say, you know what part of it is. There's this thing where like to give a soundbite, you say, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." You have to like deliver the line, and he'll be like, "Ask, not." He just can't like deliver. Like even if he has a great statement to make or like a great line, it's never 100% clean. So the people who make his ads, I know they're spending millions of dollars, but it must be really hard to get 5 seconds of him tear down this wall. I mean, you never get that satisfaction of him just delivering.
But his Trump shots were clean. I mean, the Trump shots were clearly planned. He clearly had lines prepared.
That was the best. Yeah.
But he executed them.
Yeah, that was his best.
And so, and no one was interested in going after Jeb because Jeb's at 3% and no one thinks he's a threat. So Jeb has sort of free reign and once he's pounding on Trump. And I don't care what Frank Luntz focus groups have to say because those are rigged affairs.
Well, I don't know if they're rigged. I just don't think that they're that predictive of anything.
I mean, I have no evidence that he has like a true cross section of the Republican primary voter in that room. So everything I see him do is all just like we love the most rabid, foaming person on the stage all the time.
Yeah,
and there's no indication that means that that person's going to win the primary. So
well, and the other thing too is the Luntz focus group. I mean, remember, after the very first debate, which was a Fox News debate, the Luntz focus group showed that the public turned on Donald Trump.
Right.
I think that's right. I think I'm remembering that right. And of course, they did.
Because
the
things happen after the debate. I mean, he's judging everything based on these millisecond moments in the debate, and the post debate's very important, and the focus groups don't get to that at all. But that aside, and Jeb aside, just the points. Chris had a good debate. Chris had a lot of good moments in the debate. So, is it possible that the Cruz Rubio scrap drags them both down? They expose each other's weaknesses and allow someone else to fill the void.
I think that's entirely possible, Bill. And even though I don't buy your Jeb theory, I do buy your theory that they're in different lanes. And look, I thought that Cruz had a chance to take this debate and go to the next level because he comes into the debate with polling showing him winning Iowa. And I still think he'll win Iowa, but I don't think he fully capitalized on it. And I think he had a better day the day of the debate than he had the day after the debate. So I think when this all washes out, Cruz and Rubio will be slightly less better shape than they were a week ago. And so that means that they're competitors in their lane. So for Cruz, that would be Trump. And for Rubio, it might be Christie or Bush. I think the problem with Rubio is not so much that the support goes to Bush or Christie, but just that it prevents the people from coalescing around Rubio. Like if Rubio, let's just say that Rubio had a great night and had kicked ass and was the indisputed winner of the debate, then you might have seen people to start really coalescing around Rubio and calls for Bush and others to get out. By the way, random theory I have, I see, I don't think I'm talking out of school here. I just, name dropping my Hugh Hewitt, my friend Hugh Hewitt, who wrote the forward to Dumb to Fail. He says, how do you think Jeb did? I say, I think he did good. I think he did the best debate. Not saying much, but the best debate. He says, does that keep him in? Does that keep him in through the new year? And I said, you know what? I don't know, but if he's going to get out, maybe he wants to go out on top. Like, if you were going to get out, and by the way, this is the guy who predicted John Boehner stepping down after John Paul, immediately after John Paul II's speech. Or not JP2, Pope Francis. That Boehner would announce his retirement after Pope Francis spoke to Congress. Anyway, back to current events. If Jeb were planning an exit strategy, let's just say, wouldn't he want to go out after a good debate? Like, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna. Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's gonna get out, and I don't think Mike. I mean, I don't know. You know, I don't see Mike Murphy or whoever's like the Jeb people advising this to happen. But in a sense, it's like, well, I finally gave Donald Trump, gave as good as I got, and I can go out in style now. I don't think it's going to happen.
I think everybody wants to make it through New Hampshire. I mean, things are still jumbled enough.
All right.
And there have been plenty of comeback stories in history that if you have the money and the time, you at least go through New Hampshire and see where that takes you.
So other theory I picked up. I don't know who I'm stealing this from, but theory goes, and this is a tortured theory as to how Rubio can pull this off, but it's plausible. Endorsements generally don't matter, except on rare occasions. Romney endorses Rubio right before the New Hampshire primary. Rubio wins New Hampshire. This is the theory. Jeb endorses Rubio right before the Florida primary. That's the wild theory as to how.
Well, I mean, certainly if Rubio wins New Hampshire, and there's a sense that he is, the Cruz killer or the Trump killer, depending on who gets out of Iowa, I'm sure there'll be a big push to try to consolidate around Rubio and prevent, the worst from happening, and not have the establishment vote be split up amongst more than one. Whether Jeb would get out right after that and throw his way to Rubio, I think would depend on how commanding the Rubio win was.
Well, if Jeb doesn't have any victories, and it looks like he won't, and it looks like he's going to lose Florida, then the question is, does Jeb harbor such personal animosity now toward his former protege that he wouldn't endorse him?
I don't think that's the case. I think Jeb is a party man, and I think he most would not want to see a Cruz or a Trump take over the party. I mean, that was his whole impetus to get in this race, to make the party, more joyful and less angry. There are plenty of instances where, people jostle in the primary and very easily mend fences once it's over. So, I think the reason why it won't be Cruz or Trump is that the establishment will pull itself together and do everything it can to stop them, and I think they have more resources than the Tea Party folks. I think once that person is really breaking away, there'll be a push to close it out and avoid any kind of broker convention kind of deal. I'm not with you that Rubio is a certainty to win New Hampshire, but if he did, that would, and it was a commanding win. It wasn't like just 1 point. Then that would certainly change the calculus for a lot of people. I want to. We've been going for a bit. There are a couple of things I want to make sure we get to. Particularly, I want to hear what it was like to be trapped in a sound booth for 3 days, reading your own book nonstop.
Oh yeah,
I know
I forgot about that.
You got to do your own audiobook. You get to record it. So the audiobook comes out the same day as the hardcover. I assume it's all mid-January, right?
Yeah, January 26th.
So this is only 1 month away.
January 26th.
You're under the gun. You can't screw things up. What kind of pressure was that like? I mean, how painful an experience was that to go through?
Yeah, it's funny. It was just a couple of days ago I recorded the audiobook, and because I was in Vegas and the debate, seems like a month ago, but it was interesting. There's a place that's called Clean Cuts, which is a recording studio where I did this, and it's even harder than I thought. I had emailed Jonah Goldberg. This is going to be the name dropping episode. Because Jonah did a great version of his book, The Tyranny of Cliches, where he actually read it. A lot of times they'll hire actors, voice actors to do it. But if you're sort of a brand, or if people know you, they see you on TV, I mean, it's awesome to have Jonah Goldberg reading his book. And he did it in a very Jonah Goldberg way. So actually, I would recommend getting that if it's a good book. And he told me it was tougher than I thought, and he was right. So this book, it's not that long. you could probably read it in about 4 or 5 hours. You know, if you're flying to Vegas, you could read my whole book on that flight probably. But it took 3 days, basically 3 full days to record. I would basically go there at 10 in the morning and leave around 4:30 in the afternoon, and we'd have about an hour lunch break. But you don't realize as much as we all talk, you don't realize how hard it is to talk for about 2 hours without stopping. I drank a ton of hot tea and honey. And anytime you make a mistake, you say you pronounce a word that isn't quite right, you have to start over. Not at the beginning, but at the beginning of the sentence. There's also words like, there's words that we write that we don't always pronounce. So you have to study how to pronounce, whether it's a French word or whatever. That was interesting. You also will discover mistakes that you made in the book. No matter how many people read your book, no matter how thoroughly you edited it. That's an example of I would have to have just started over with that. Edited it. I find the word politicization very difficult to say. That one tripped me up several times in the book. I'm just going to quit writing it, so I never have to say it. There were a few words like that were hard. But overall, when you read the book out loud for 18 hours, you will discover mistakes you made. And it happens. They tell me it happens every single book. They told me that there was a book that came out like 50 years ago, and they had the expert of the book, the person who's like the historian or expert of it, came in to read it. And I guess to have some commentary, and they discovered mistakes that had been in like reprints for 50 years or different editions. I have to go back in at some point and fix other. They're going to call me back in. Right now, there's a team of editors working around the clock, I'm sure, to edit all of the recordings that I gave them together, and then I'm going to have to go back in and fix mistakes. Probably about an hour's worth of work. So. But, buy that because that's cool, and it's me reading it, and, And
it's the whole book. The whole audiobook is not an abridged version.
No, it is everything. It didn't have Hugh Hewitt's foreword, but it had my introduction, my afterword, and the entire friggin' book in there. Trust me, 3 days of me being in a studio reading. And it's amazing, too, just like, if you're trying to promote a book and you're a writer, like giving up 3 days to go into a studio is difficult. Which is probably why I ran into Arthur Brooks at a AEI holiday party, also name dropping, and also who provides a blurb for my book. And he said, "Yeah, I did that the first time I wrote a book, and I'm never going to do it again." This is because it's like really time consuming, and physically, and especially for your voice. It is very much more challenging than I thought.
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about you have an upcoming podcast guest, Jonathan Last, talking about this conservative reimagining of who are the good guys and bad guys of Star Wars. But maybe we should save that to after you have the conversation. We're going to go next week. That's not too time sensitive.
No, and these have all been Matt centric. Sort of jags that we've gone on here anyway. So I don't want to talk anymore. But
I got nothing, so that's fine.
But there is a theory that Jonathan V. Last and others are touting that alleges that it turns out that the Jedi Knights were terrorists and that the Empire was actually good. Which reminds me of the sort of the ballad of Johnny Lawrence and how this horrible Danny LaRusso kid moved to town and stole his girlfriend.
Well, we'll get into this in greater detail for our special Christmas episode next week.
All right, buddy. remind me next week not to talk so much, and we need to have more Bill-centric stories next week.
Well, I need to do something for Real Clear Politics for Monday, so I'll have something more to put on the table next week.
All right, man. Good show. Thanks for
you too, sir.
Thanks for having us in your homes, and I guess we will need to talk. So we'll do a next week show. It sounds like, and then I guess we go darker, or maybe we'll do a special holiday edition. I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, our people, you should, at this point, I think you just need to talk to my agents and my and my publicists. Okay?
All right.
See ya.
Till next week.